When you look to the future of the restaurant business, you have to take a variety of things into consideration: technology, food trends, the war on talent, consumer behavior, and the evolution of how operators themselves will adapt to the future market. In this episode, we will get a chance to take a look into the crystal ball to understand where the future of restaurants will be heading. Joining me today is Leah Cotterman, Director of Strategy and Insights at WD Partners, and Rose Phillips on WD's Strategy and Insights team. They're here with me today to explore the future of restaurants. Listen in. All right, so ladies, welcome to the show today. Thanks so much for stopping in.
Thanks for having us.
We're excited.
Right. Yeah, so let's get right into it and really kind of learn a little bit about WD Partners and kind of your mission in the industry. Some people may not be aware of WD Partners. You guys have been in the business for quite a while.
Yeah, I believe we just had our 50-year anniversary. We are WD Partners out of Columbus, Ohio, but we actually have locations around the globe. I believe we're slightly around the 350 mark in terms of number of employees, but we have offices reaching all the way to Mumbai and out to California, and then back here to Columbus, which we call home. So we are the thinkers that do.
Yeah. Now, is that Leah or Rose talking there?
This is Leah.
Okay. I just want to make sure. You guys have very similar voices, so it's going to be hard to pick up each one of you. But I'll go into kind of I guess maybe the backgrounder for each of you. Have you guys been in the food service business? What drew each of you to this area?
So I'll start here. So we are both strategists within WD Partners, and we focus in on experience innovation. So food service is one of the many industries that we do our strategy and insight work around. I have been able to get in touch with projects reaching from CPG to financial services to mass retail to specialty retailer, pharmacy retail, a little bit of everything. So we employ the same problem-solving methodology regardless of which industry. And so food service has been one of the many that we've touched and employed our work on.
How many sectors do you guys cover?
Sectors, everything from health and wellness to big box to small box retail, including specialty, mall-based, that sort of thing, to non-traditional types of retail, to medical. Where in terms of number of sectors, it kind of spans the full breadth of areas, actually.
Cool. You were going to say something, Rose?
Just to add to what Leah said, we are also huge foodies. So finding and exploring the most interesting restaurants and cuisines, staying up on the pulse of dining is a big passion for both of us, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I mean, I've been watching WD Partners for quite some time and have always been, in admiration of some of the projects that I've seen you guys involved in. So it's great to have you and your company on the show today. Let's get into some of the key futuristic aspects of the restaurant industry. This is one that I get a lot of listeners and viewers always hitting me up on Twitter about, and that is kind of this whole approach toward big data. A few years ago, big data was kind of the buzzword. It's not so much big data anymore. It's just data. And, now, though, we are seeing kind of the average operator actually have access to some of this stuff that it used to be, kind of the bigger chains. What are your thoughts on how data is going to be used in the future of restaurants out there?
Well, there's no shortage of it, that's for sure. Everything from integrating those insights about the market that you're in into your development process so you can make more insight-driven decisions, to really getting a direct line of communication with your actual customers through loyalty programs and the like. That's a big key to success for operators from a customer relationship perspective, but then there's the whole element of your operational data and being able to optimize around that. The service speed matters across every vertical of food service.
Right.
The satisfaction matters across every single touch point. So having a strategy in place to measure the efficacy of each one of those experience moments, as we like to call them, is going to be really a key differentiator when you can actually track it and then respond and design to enhancing it over the entire customer journey. And that's what we work with customers to really try to do from the end-to-end experience.
And in
So-
terms, and in, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Rose. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in terms of that customer journey, we're seeing some interesting developments in terms of guest management. So different systems that are able to track your guest preferences, and also things in line with waste reduction. Sort of ordering ingredients based on weather data. We're seeing some really creative uses of data, and I think we're just going to continue to see more of those.
Yeah. So you mentioned both back of house and a front of house function right there when you look at guest preferences. Are you saying something like in an app where somebody might be engaging with the restaurant in a mobile app or something of that nature, or is this physical guest preferences that are being recorded somehow in the restaurant of the future?
I think, yeah, both.
Okay. All right. So I've seen a couple of things that are a little bit scary in the sense that, and this has been going on for quite some time, I think, just not maybe to the advanced level that I've noticed here recently. I know there are a few companies out there that have gone into table tracking. When you go into let's say a fast casual restaurant, you make your order, you kind of take this little device back to your table, and this table basically starts the queue time. So how long did it take for your order to get to the table? That's where it gets, I think, back to your point, Leah, is kind of that transaction period. But now these companies are actually dialing this down all the way to the user themselves. Is how far into data do you think we're going to see things that are on the physical plant in the restaurant in the future? Because obviously privacy issues could come into play. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, I think that personalization it's going to be more and more the future. I mean, when we're talking about people's desire for convenience and their desire for a tailored experience, those two things go hand in hand. And I think it's because people don't have time. They're running out of time. They're just busier and busier every day. And I believe that personalization is a way to take all the noise out and serve up a shorter list of options, or the options that are right and best for you. So I feel like data down to the individual, personalization, and really that people's increasing desire for convenience. Those three stories, they all work in concert. And so the brands that can really come up with an attack plan at understanding the types of people that come to their restaurants or that enjoy their particular food offer, as well as the families or the cohorts, right down to the individual. The more narrow you can get, and the more that relationship feels one-to-one, the better off you're going to be, and more really future-proofed you're going to be.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And you were going to add there?
Yeah, I have something to add. It's all about striking the right balance. We've seen a QSR operator using facial recognition to sort of pull up guest profiles. After a certain point, that becomes creepy. So I think it's about, how are you identifying who the guest is in a way that people consider okay?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the challenge. Obviously, for all of us Apple users, we've kind of exposed ourselves to the facial recognition here, which who knows how that data is going to be used in the future. Obviously, in a public place, it's a little bit different. Obviously, if I'm with my phone, it's a much more intimate experience. I've clearly given my phone the right to do that. But when I walk into a public facility, though it is public, I think that's going to be the question in the future, is just how far into the data truck can they go and to what level? Because I still believe that we're going to see a time, it may not be something very new, but or very soon, is that at some point I feel like the consumer is probably going to take control of their data and own it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to be like any other asset a person has. It's your personal dossier, it's your preferences, it's how you buy, what you eat, who you hang out with, all those things, and most likely start to sell that. Obviously, right now, companies like Facebook, Twitter, all those guys are, manipulating this the best they can to their advantage, which is creating a very unique ecosystem in a lot of ways. So I'm definitely on the fence. When it comes to big data, I think we need it for businesses. It'll just be interesting to see how we can do it in a way that everybody's happy, with it.
Yeah, and there's a thing that happens though, in behaviors that are adopted in the entire consumption landscape. So what I mean by that is, when people begin to accept a behavior within one industry, it
Right.
shapes the way they think about experiences in another industry. It's the same reason why, all it took was Starbucks having a loyalty app and a massive following and the ability to customize down to a very particular level before everyone started expecting that sort of tailored experience just about everywhere else they went. Amazon 2-day shipping, and suddenly everybody's expectation for every other shopping experience they have is that it's there within 48 hours. So
Right.
I think what's probably going to happen, while I don't doubt that there's going to be some maybe growing discontent around that privacy and having to keep that safe, I think that there's going to be more of an acceptability of facial recognition. I mean, we've got bio payment, happening in grocery stores. So I think that when we get to the restaurant experience, that's going to be increasingly acceptable. It's going to be the reality,
Well, yes, I would say that's a possibility. The difference is when the guest is opting in. If they're opting in, then absolutely, because you've obviously given whatever retailer access to your preferences and all those types of things, like my Starbucks app or my Amazon account. I know that Amazon knows everything I'm purchasing, starts to strategically try to ship me stuff before I even order it. Sure, that's going to happen, but I've given Amazon that right and that capability because I want that convenience factor. But if I walk into a restaurant, of which I do not know, which a lot of times I do, and they start going at me with stuff, then it's like, hey, wait a minute, I haven't said you could come in yet. I'm just here checking out your menu.
That I understand, but I think I take it to a degree of, today with clients, we have the ability to do, emotional analytics and be able to understand the mood you're in and tailor to that, respond to that,
Okay.
And
I'd like
and
to
I
see
think
that really work. I'd like to see that really work.
We can do it. Of course, it's early technology and we're still figuring it out. Let that be true as it may. But there's a there.
Yeah.
It's in beta, but there's something more that it can evolve to become.
Yeah. A little bit. Well, I think this takes us to our next question, and that is, and this is one that comes up on anything that when we're talking about technology, especially with a show, the topic of the restaurant of the future is AI, and kind of where AI stands in food service today. Just for our listeners out there, essentially there's 4 types of AI. You have the kind of the first area of AI, which is reactive. Basically just no memory, only responds to different stimuli. Then you go into limited memory, uses memory to basically kind of learn and improve. Those are more almost algorithmic. And then theory of mind, these are the ones where I think it gets a little bit scary. And that's when it starts to understand the needs of the intelligent entities. And then self-aware, that's kind of like the ultimate AI. That's Lawnmower Man and all beyond. So now that we've framed that, where do you think AI is today in the restaurant business? Do you think it's still just a toddler or barely even an embryo?
Somewhere between.
Embryo and toddler? Okay.
I mean, okay, so AI in restaurants today, is it an embryo or is it a toddler? I think it's somewhere in between. I mean, it's only just getting off the ground. There's so much further we can go. I mean, there are on the retail side, we're embracing it much more intelligently already.
Right.
And on the restaurant food service side, it's still an apprehension to figure it out. I mean, part of our consumer research we did recently was asking about how people feel about robot kitchens, and people don't want to get rid of that yet. And I think that there's kind of like this two-sided equation happening where consumers are fearful of the most human thing, which is food, losing its human factor. And at the same time, operators on the other end are going, we don't want to, it's not that we don't want to, it's that it's getting increasingly difficult to staff these operations. And we need to do it as intelligently as we possibly can so it continues to be a viable, unit for us. So it's kind of like we're afraid of it, but we need it conundrum when it comes to that. So
yeah, and I've been in some labs of which I cannot talk about because they require us to sign NDAs when we go into these places. And I've seen some pretty interesting things. And I'm a bit of a skeptic on AI currently because I'm not sure it's going to actually happen in our lifetime, meaning in the next 50 years. And unless we get to some port of quantum computing or something changes drastically in how we can, compute these kinds of problems. Even though I listen a lot to Elon Musk about what he's seeing in AI, of course, that's at kind of the very high end level. Even though I do feel like the food service industry and service industry in general is going to have to come up with some sort of solution to deal with the labor problem. At some point in the next 10 years, we're going to have a solution there. I don't think the kiosk is going to be the solution of the future. It's going to be just a tool, just like the point of sale system was, when it started 25 years ago, when we went off the ECR and into the POS. It was just really kind of a tool. But that brings me, you mentioned something, I think it was Rose that mentioned this, and that is kind of this metric of changing in the food. Have you guys heard of this term called food as software?
Actually,
out there?
No.
Yeah, this is something I just discovered in a report I was reading, and essentially it kind of goes to the idea of what's happening in the faux meat industry is lab grown or bioengineered food instead of grown or produced. I'm curious, have you seen in any of the reports or research that WD has done, have you guys gone into any of that area as of yet?
Not in that direction. Food that has, biological benefits, like health benefits, like adding boosts to your food, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
But like, if we're going down a path of like fully engineered, no. Where I thought you might have been going with food as software is the idea of it almost like as, forgive the pun, like an ingredient inside of an operation of a ghost kitchen. Ghost kitchens come up in like every third conversation we have with food service operators, but not from the way that you're describing food as software. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's one that is kind of circling around the whole concept of processed product that isn't necessarily protein or even plant based. In some cases, it might just be nutrient enriched, much like supplements. So the theory is much like if you look someone like Finless or Memphis Meats, who are trying to figure out the way to make and develop beef tasting product that's grown in a lab, or fish tasting product that is essentially they're using software and engineering to come up with these methodologies. And it's more than just the processing. I guess it's kind of a fancy way to say kind of the futuristic of food processing, which we've been doing for 30, 40 years now. This could go a lot into that direction. When you talk about ghost kitchens, because you brought that up, I'm kind of curious, because ghost kitchens are something. See, I'm the biggest skeptic out there of a lot of these new things, and I look at ghost kitchens and wonder, because this is a thing that I always talk to business leaders about. If you're building your business on someone else's capability, you've already lost. So like an Uber Eats or a Grubhub or all these companies, which are, it's that last mile. So with a ghost kitchen, doesn't the last mile become kind of the tether to life? Because you're not really creating a retail system that's discoverable anyway.
It's not right for everybody, right? But it is a module that could make sense in your portfolio.
Yeah.
And for some, just getting their brand out there, that is a brilliant platform. For others, when they don't have the brand control of that last mile,
right,
it potentially is just failure ridden. But it's a model that enables, when considered as just a food production facility that can get a whole bunch of volume out, where you can have multiples higher check by having delivery agents come to that facility and spread the love of your product. That is a potential way forward for the brands that it's right for.
All right, so ladies, let's go into kind of this next area, and that is the idea of convenience. We've kind of talked about this a little bit, in the terms of technology and data and all that, making convenience really good. But off-premise and this mobile consumer, what are you seeing in terms of trends here? What are you guys tracking?
This is one that just won't slow down. From the most macro perspective, if you kind of like way zoom out and you look over a longer range timeline, you've got more dual working parents working longer hours with longer commutes. And what that means is there's less just quality time for life, for doing the things that people are working to earn, and enjoy. And so when you've got that dynamic around you, what it means is that this precious commodity, which is time, it has just gone up in value, multifold. And so, what's happening in convenience? Well, everyone that offers something that can be categorized as convenience is winning. So, when I was introducing, us as a firm and mentioned that, we touch lots of different industries, this we know holds true. So convenience in retail, we see it as buy online, pick up in store, hockey sticking. In financial services, we see direct banking and digital banking hockey sticking. When it comes to food service, it's the delivery proposition. So what is convenience? Well, it's like this train that won't quit because everyone is trying to find a way to just win back a few more precious minutes in life. And if you can figure out how to solve that problem for people, they're gonna prefer you. They're gonna choose you.
And the way brands have been solving to this has been really interesting. I mean, as we've seen, tons of QSR brands especially have moved towards using delivery aggregators. But then we've also seen sort of the downsides of that, which is like huge chunks of margins
Sure.
disappearing, so then we're starting to see this pushback where brands like Domino's are, considering themselves a tech company that sells pizza and sort of taking that data back into their own hands. And, it's basically become, sort of like a delivery arms race, like who can answer this question the fastest.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think with what we've watched in the last few years, and we've made some pretty bold predictions around this, and some of which have come true, and both in growth and the potential of the demise of on-demand delivery. Especially when you look at the company like Uber, which I still think is a company that is destined for eventual failure. Most likely, their stock price, I think, is just going to deflate maybe as much as 50 to 60%, maybe in the next 2 years, because their business model is just not going to work. But it is setting the standard, and it's starting to teach the industry how to do this, which I think that's the part that's going to be the great takeaway. A friend of mine, Anthony Pigliacampo, who is the CEO of Modern Market, he and I met when he had one store. Modern Market, I think, is about 20 units now. They merged with Lemonade. And one thing that was always interesting with Anthony is he is a technologist that is a restaurant guy. And one thing I noticed with him is, where I watch him move is kind of where I see the industry going, because he's been right a lot of times. And that is he's gone the direction of self-delivery and basically automating that whole process within the brand. That, I think, is the future. I don't think on-demand is going to slow down. Where I think it's going to slow down is going to be in these companies that are in last mile that really don't have anything to do with the business. It's just, they're just a courier. And it hasn't really succeeded, I think, in the history of time when you lose control of your brand. So that'll be interesting to see how off-premise, kind of continues to go to that next level.
Yeah. I think this whole subject is really curious when you start to play it out. Like, when you look at just in recent history, the people who've used that as an opportunity to create a really brand distinctive touch point out of it. You've got brands that have invested in, Jimmy John's. You've got the guys on bicycles. That Jimmy John's guy on the bicycle, he's branded head to toe. These are extremely fit people. You're seeing them fly about the city. And, that's distinctive. Now, people actually want to be a Jimmy John's delivery bike rider. That's interesting. And in a world where we're inside of a war for talent, and you've created not only a distinctive last mile touch point, but one that people really want to associate themselves with. Like, that's a 2-for-1 deal. I want to say it was, gosh, keep me honest here, I think it was Domino's that did the anywhere delivery. They would, if you're sitting at a park in the middle of whatever town, they will find you inside of the physical park and bring your order directly to you. You actually don't even have to have a physical address association.
Yeah. Which is fascinating to me because pizza has done this forever. They've built POS systems around this, databases, geolocation tracking. They probably are some of the most advanced companies in one of the tightest margins of the industry, being pizza. So they've been able to pull it off. I feel like the rest of the industry is a little bit lazy here, not just like a Panera. They should have their own delivery system. Any major chain that has over 500 units, I would think, because I just see with Uber, they're going to start shutting down cities soon, where you're not going to have Uber just because it's not profitable. They have to get profitable, and that company is in dire straits right now, especially if you look at the Vision Fund, in which they're backed after they just took a bath on WeWork, which is going to affect that whole scenario of how that fund is dealing with companies like Uber. So that'll be interesting, and it might leave a lot of leftovers for someone like Postmates, which I hear more and more bad things about them. You've got DoorDash over here accused of doing wrongdoings with their delivery drivers. Then you've got Grubhub, who's trying to acquire in every other sector except delivery. When you've got them going into all other technology areas. It'd be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, and you used a harsh word, and I just want to hang on it for a sec here, and that is the word lazy. And
Lazy. I say it
yeah,
all the time.
yeah, and I just want to throw it out there that I think it actually just comes from the place of more difficult than lazy, right? Like everybody has constrained resources. And so when they look at their business and they're trying to figure out how to grow, they're looking at their options probably on a matrix of ease versus impact. And the
Right.
ease is going to be considerations like, is this in our capability set today? And is it going to be easy for us to swallow the pill, which is insurance coverage on our people that are biking around the city, or people that are driving around the city, or people that are entering someone's home, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And I think it's
Well,
for those
technically,
reasons.
yeah, I think that brand is already at risk. I've talked to plenty of attorneys that, even though it's an Uber driver who is a contractor in most cases, except for the state of California, that is an extension of the brand now, more and more so because of the relationship that's being built between Uber and the restaurant and the connectivity. And, there's going to be some very interesting legal challenges, I think, down the road. If it happens, and we don't even have to get into food safety. That's another, rabbit hole to go into. But
Oh yeah.
but the issue of safety and all those kind of things, I can't imagine that a CEO today is looking at off-premise not as one of their major areas of investment. I mean, that they have to take this step because, as you said earlier, it's not going to slow down. It's only going to go
Yeah.
forward. I think the
Yeah.
options are going to just start to reduce. So if you're a chain like Panera, who has mostly mid-America, they couldn't really effectively operate if Uber drops out of a market like Tulsa, Oklahoma, where that's in the center of Panera Bread's heartland. You're right there in stores that are doing, $2 million a year. All right, so ladies, let's go into this whole idea of occasion-based dining, because this is something that we are tracking here on Foodable Labs, where we've seen kind of more migration to that, kind of experiential dining. Some people reference it that way. If you look at fast casual, which has been one of the stars of the industry, that could actually be a hard hit area. I'm kind of curious, what are your thoughts in terms of experiential dining in the future? More companies doing it, less companies? What are your thoughts there?
I think everyone's going to be figuring out what is experiential to them. I don't think there's going to be a one of them that's going to shy fully away if they want to survive this
Yeah.
this next wave. I think that experiential can mean a lot of things, right? We're seeing it mean everything from the environment, being more immersive and layered and dynamic, to experiential meaning collaborations with retail and brands. We're seeing experiential mean, that food is actually a small component of the equation, and it's sort of a piece of a much bigger experience. Like, great example we love talking about is the Taco Bell hotel. All of this really kind of comes down to what we call, crafting for craveability. People are looking for something that's that makes the trip worth the trouble. That makes that makes you want to tell others about it, Instagram about it. It's an experience because, like I mentioned earlier, everybody's so short on time. So figuring out what experiential means for your particular brand is going to be something that needs to be present in every format that you have available.
Any examples of companies that you think you mentioned the Taco Bell hotel? I mean, there's companies out there like Top Golf, who have this whole concept going, and a few others. Any that have you seen that you're like, hey, this is really showing some great potential growth?
I mean, it's happening across the board, right? So you've got pop-ups that happen. One of the ones that I loved experiencing myself was the Kellogg's, of all things, cereal pop-up in New York a handful of years back. You've got hotels trying to get into the food service space. You've got retailers trying to get into the food service space. So it's kind of the industries are blurring. We know that's happening left and right. We did a piece not too long ago where we said that the mall of the future is in part a food hall, and we're already seeing that happen now. So experiential means it's new, it's different, it breaks the model of what people are, what they expect today, and it is way more engaging. Things like chef-led kitchens with open food theater, where you can actually watch things being prepared. Concepts that involve a fully orchestrated experience, soup to nuts. So you can walk in with a paid ticket. There's a great concept out of Washington, D.C., led by Jose Andres, where it's a full event. You purchase tickets in advance, you come, and from the moment you walk in, it's over here for your drinks, over here for in a separate zone to be cooked for right in front of you. Every meal is explained how it's made, and then you kind of go to the end, and there's a participatory sort of experience with the dessert. So that is a full-bodied experience. That's obviously on the more premium end. That's more the smaller scale sort of an outfit, but that's going to get more and more mass. The experiences worth having.
So definitely on the upswing for sure. Last topic: self-service and human capital. So we've kind of over the past 3 or 4 years we've seen some shifts in what I think are actually better kiosks or self-ordering stations. McDonald's has probably done it the best. I think one of the most innovative. What are your thoughts on that, of that being able to address our frontline, human capital issue that we are facing as an industry?
So, it's funny. I think that the kiosk is a Band-Aid that is short term, while people are still kind of getting over this adoption period of doing most everything via their phone.
Right.
I think it's just this middle period that we're having these big touch screens in places, and it's really bolt-on technology. It's something that's there, and not in a really conducive way. More often than not, when we're auditing restaurant locations and they have kiosks, we walk in and they're only being used when there is a line with the human being. So people are still opting, from our observation, to go and order first with the person, because that's the rote memory that's there. The technology that's in the kiosk, it's more often than not in the wrong place. It's causing pinch points and confusion, and it's taking away that human element. Or it doesn't work, exactly. Or it's just something that children play with, and then it gets dirty and gross. So we think there's a long way to go on that, but we wouldn't even advise spending a lot of attention and energy there. We would say leapfrog over to the next innovation that's going to be right, which is getting rid of that step in the journey altogether, or just really leaning into the human touch.
Yeah, I think we definitely agree on that, because mobile, I feel, just like is the vehicle for the future on all of that. Auto pay, all tied into whether it's RFID or Bluetooth Low Energy, any of those kind of technologies, much like Amazon Go, what they're doing with their retail stores. I just feel like that's going to be kind of the future. It's just, you're going to walk up, they're going to know who you are if they're doing face recognition, and they got your dossier up there, Minority Report style. Here.
And Amazon Go's already expanding. Yeah, it's happening. And like I mentioned earlier, if what Amazon did to people's minds around expectations with delivery now holds true with them rolling out Go, with any amount of scale, it's going to change the game across industries. I literally just had a conversation yesterday with a dental service provider who was asking the question, do you think that this is going to affect how speedy people expect to get in and out of their dentist appointments? And the answer is an unequivocal yes. It is going to impact it, and it's going to happen. It's going to permeate every industry. People are going to
Yeah.
expect it to be seamless.
I
Yeah,
definitely
and,
agree with
you know,
that.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing brands starting to lay down the groundwork for things like that. So, McDonald's partnership with Dynamic Yield, for example, the drive-through kiosk that has the ability to change and recommend menus based on the weather. Well, soon we're going to be seeing that, recommending menus, like maybe it scans your license plate and, recognizes what you've ordered in the past. That personalization element is going to play a big factor.
Yeah. With that, it kind of just as a follow on, because there has been these dynamic menu approach companies that are, I mean, this is technology for the, for the profitability aspect, but do you feel like that's really going to be more, much like hotels, airlines do today, dynamic menu pricing based on demand and all those kind of factors? Do you feel like we could see that really being implemented especially at the chain level for food service?
That's kind of a difficult one right there to kind of plug and play that tactic for food service when you're talking about a chain, because the moment that you're taking a known price for a key menu item and manipulating it across markets, that's likely going to turn into a PR nightmare. But if it is something that has the ability to have more variable pricing, and it doesn't have that expectation that a number one always costs me, $3.50 or whatever it is. If you have more ability to tailor to the market or to the weather or whatever the conditions are, hey, that's for the taking.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Of course, my conspiracy theory is always out there that at some point they're going to know enough about us to charge us what we can pay, or or based on everything that comes from our health. Oh, you shouldn't be eating that hamburger, but if you want to pay the premium, that's okay.
I give you the UGG, but you know what? There are already concepts out there that are pay what you think it's worth.
Yeah.
So I think that actually has more likelihood of taking hold, because that goes down really a purpose-driven path that people are really gravitating toward.
Yeah.
Pay what we think you can afford. I think that would fail probably pretty fast.
Well, they may not. Most people probably would not know it. It's kind of like Sonic Drive-In. They are kind of the masters of this. Is dynamic pricing from, because they're mostly dealing with these, and they've been doing it for decades, is different markets have different prices on everything from slushes to cheese fries. I mean, it's not a lot different. Sometimes it's a nickel. But
if it's not meaningful,
that's the key.
And if it's not a known price item, then sure, yes, absolutely, knock yourself out. But the moment that you take something that might have a loyal following, I think that could become problematic.
Yeah, that's for sure. There's many cases where that's actually backfired on some companies. So we're going to wrap this up. Ladies, it's been great having you here on the Barron Report. I love talking about future trends in the restaurant business, and you have had some great insights. So thanks for stopping in on the show today.
Thanks for having us. We hope to do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely. All right. So we're going to wrap up here and close out this episode of the Barron Report. Of course, remember, you can subscribe to this podcast and others right here from Foodable Network just by going to iTunes and searching Foodable Network. It'll display all the different podcasts that we have there. If you are a Spotify listener, you can do the same thing over there and find a ton of podcasts right there from Foodable Network. Also, if you have a great show idea or maybe a guest that you would like on this show, make sure and send us the information. Give us the lowdown on them. Send it to producer@foodabletv.com. We'll get it. And as always, leave a 5-star on Apple, iTunes. If you loved it, if you did not like it, send me a tweet and tell me why. Thanks again for listening in to another episode of the Barron Report. We'll catch you next time.